The night stretched endlessly, draped in the kind of silence that made the world feel abandoned. A pale moon hung low in the sky, its ghostly glow reflecting off the icy pavement. The wind whistled through the empty streets, rattling old street signs and stirring up loose scraps of paper that danced like lost spirits in the night. And in the heart of this frozen, unforgiving world, lay a creature on the edge of existence. A stray dog. His fur, once golden and full, was now matted with dirt and tangled from weeks of exposure to the elements. His ribs jutted out beneath his skin, each breath he took slow and shallow, as though he was trying to hold on to whatever life he had left. His paws, cracked and bleeding, rested against the cold concrete, each step he had taken marked by suffering. But the worst pain was not the hunger, not the cold. It was the loneliness. He had once known the warmth of a home. He had once had a name. But now, he was nothing more than a forgotten shadow, another stray lost in a world too busy to notice him. The city had turned its back on him. People passed without a second glance. Some recoiled in disgust. Others yelled, shooing him away as though he were nothing more than a nuisance. He had tried to find warmth outside restaurants, in the back alleys, near the flickering glow of streetlights where people gathered. But every time, he was chased away, reminded again and again that he did not belong. And now, lying there beneath the dim glow of a dying street lamp, he felt the weight of it all pressing down on him. His body ached. His spirit was drained. His hope, what little of it remained, was slipping away like sand through his pores. He closed his eyes, and for a moment, he allowed himself to give in to the exhaustion. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was where it ended. And yet, something inside him refused to let go. Because love had once been real. Because he had once belonged to someone. And even if the world had turned its back on him, that love, however distant, however lost, was still out there. Somewhere, a memory surfaced, fragile and flickering like a candle in the wind. A child's laughter. A small, warm hand stroking his fur. A voice whispering his name. And just like that, his heart made a decision. He did not know where he was going. He did not know if he would make it. But he knew one thing. He could not die here. Not yet. Not like this. With one final surge of willpower, the stray dog forced himself to stand. His legs wobbled beneath him, his muscles screaming in protest. The wind bit at his thin frame as he lifted his head, staring into the vast emptiness ahead. He would walk. He would keep moving. Because love was still out there, and he was going to find it. If you believe in the power of kindness, stay with me until the end of this story. The stray walked with slow, aching steps, his paws pressing into the frozen ground with each weary stride. The wind howled around him, tugging at his dirty fur, but he did not stop. He could not. Something deep inside pushed him forward, a memory, a feeling, a whisper of warmth in a world that had turned ice cold. He had not always been alone. There was a time when he had a name. A time when laughter filled the air, when tiny hands wrapped around his neck in the tightest of hugs, when his world was small but safe. Her name was Lily. She had given him his name, Max. Max had belonged to her, and she had belonged to him. They had been inseparable, best friends. Every morning, she would leap from her bed and call for him, and he would bound into her arms, his tail wagging so hard it knocked over books and pillows. They had spent hours in the backyard, running through the golden grass, chasing butterflies, rolling in the warm earth. She would throw a ball, and he would fetch it, not because he wanted the ball, but because it made her giggle, that sweet, high-pitched giggle that had become the soundtrack of his life. She was his entire world. And then, the accident happened. Flashing lights, screaming voices, the smell of burning rubber, and then silence. Lily never came home, and neither did the warmth. Her parents changed after that. The house grew quieter, darker. No more laughter, no more games. They barely spoke. They barely looked at Max anymore. And then, one day, the car ride. He had thought they were going somewhere fun. The park, maybe. Or the lake where Lily used to let him splash in the water. But when the car stopped, they had stepped out in the middle of nowhere. A whisper of an apology. A hesitant glance. And then, the car door closed. The engine roared to life. And Max had chased them. His legs burned as he ran, his paws hitting the pavement over and over. He backed, desperate, crying out for them to stop. But they never looked back. And just like that, he was alone. Abandoned. Forgotten. That was months ago. Maybe longer. Time blurred when every day was a battle to survive. But now, As he walked through the desolate landscape, something inside him stirred. A thought, a feeling. He did not know how, and he did not know why, but he was certain of one thing. Somewhere, love was still out there, and he was going to find it. The road ahead. The journey was long. Miles stretched endlessly before him, each step a painful reminder of how much he had lost. The hunger was constant. His stomach growled, a hollow ache gnawing at his insides. He searched through trash cans, hoping for forgotten scraps. Sometimes, he found a crust of bread, a half-eaten sandwich, but most nights, he went to sleep with nothing. Water was harder to find. He lapped at puddles when it rained, pressed his nose to frozen streams, hoping to catch the slightest trickle of melting ice. The world was unkind to the forgotten. He had learned to move quickly past humans. Some shouted, some threw things, rocks, shoes, anything to make him go away. But there were small moments of kindness, too. The old woman who left a bowl of food outside her back door, whispering softly, "Poor thing," before disappearing inside. The little boy who reached out with hesitant fingers, offering a bite of his sandwich, his mother scolding him but not stopping him. The truck driver who tossed him a piece of jerky from his window before driving off into the night. These moments gave him strength. But even kindness could not stop the exhaustion. The further he traveled, the harder the journey became. Storms raged, the sky opening up and drenching him in icy rain. His fur clung to his thin frame, the cold seeping into his bones. One night, he found shelter beneath an old porch, curling into himself, shivering violently. He barely slept. The hunger gnawed at him, the wind howled, and his body trembled in the darkness. Then there were the other dangers. The stray dogs that fought for territory, their growls low and menacing. The cruel hands of humans who saw him as a nuisance rather than a soul in need. And worst of all, the cars. The endless stream of them, their engines roaring, their lights blinding. He had learned to stay away, to watch from the shadows. But fate was cruel. One night, as he padded through a darkened road, a sudden burst of headlights illuminated the path ahead. A car, fast, too fast. Pain exploded through his side as the vehicle clipped him, sending him tumbling into the dirt. The world spun. The pain was sharp, burning. For a moment, he lay there, gasping, his mind screaming at him to move, but his body refused. Then, voices. A door opening. Footsteps. And then, kindness. A pair of hands, gentle, lifting him. A voice, soft, filled with concern. "Hey, buddy. You're okay. I've got you." A chance at hope. When Max woke up, he was warm. For the first time in what felt like forever, he was wrapped in a blanket, a soft bed beneath him. He blinked, his vision blurry. A small room. The scent of home, wood, warmth, safety. And then, he saw her. Not Lily, but a little girl, with golden curls and bright eyes, sitting beside him, her tiny hands resting against his fur. "You're safe now," she whispered. Her parents stood behind her, watching. The man who had found him. The woman who had gently cleaned his wounds. And in that moment, Max felt something he had thought was lost forever. Love. This was not the family he had lost, but it was a new beginning, a second chance. And this time, he was never going to be left behind again. Max had no map, no sense of direction, just a feeling. His paws ached with every step, but he refused to stop. The cold was relentless, the wind biting into his exposed skin, but something inside him burned hotter than the winter chill. The need to keep going. The city lights faded behind him, swallowed by the vast emptiness of the road ahead. Fields stretched into the distance, frozen and barren. The night was silent except for the occasional rustling of dry leaves and the distant howl of another stray, lost in the darkness. Max limped forward, his body screaming for rest. But rest was dangerous. Rest meant stopping. And stopping meant the cold would seep deeper into his bones, turning his exhaustion into something final. So he walked, mile after mile. His breath came in short, shuddering gasps. Hunger clawed at his stomach, but he ignored it. The ache in his belly had become a dull, constant presence, just another part of his existence now. Then, in the distance, a flicker of hope. A gas station. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a pale glow onto the cracked pavement. A single car sat at the pump, its engine humming as the driver filled the tank. Max stayed in the shadows, watching. A man stepped out of the store, a bag of snacks in his hand. He tore open a wrapper and tossed something onto the ground, half of a sandwich. It was instinct. Max moved before he could think, his legs propelling him forward. The smell hit him first. Bread, meat, cheese. It was more food than he had seen in days. He lunged, his teeth sinking into the bread, but before he could swallow, a voice rang out. "Hey, get out of here." The man's boots swung toward him. Pain shot through Max's ribs as he stumbled backward, the sandwich slipping from his jaws. The man picked it up and threw it into the trash. "Damn strays," he muttered before climbing into his car and driving away. Max stood there, panting, his ribs throbbing from the kick. His stomach screamed in protest, but the food was gone. Defeated, he turned away and kept walking. The road stretched on endlessly, and the hunger did not fade. Not everyone was cruel. Some nights, when hope felt like a distant memory, small acts of kindness kept Max moving forward. A woman in a diner saw him huddled near the back door, his body shivering from the cold. She did not speak, did not try to pet him. She simply placed a plate of scrambled eggs outside and walked away. A truck driver at a rest stop tossed him a piece of beef jerky before disappearing into the night. A little boy, no older than Lily had been, knelt beside him one afternoon and whispered, "You look sad," before placing a peanut butter sandwich in front of him. Max ate every bite, his tail wagging for the first time in weeks. These moments were rare, but they were enough. Enough to remind him that not all humans had forgotten kindness. Enough to keep him going. Days passed. The road never seemed to end. Max had stopped counting the miles. He moved on instinct now, his body driven by something deeper than hunger or exhaustion. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, he reached a river. The water stretched wide, dark and unforgiving. A narrow bridge spanned its length, the wooden planks worn from years of storms. Max hesitated. The wind howled through the trees, rattling the branches. He stepped forward, his paws pressing against the first plank. It groaned beneath his weight. A memory surfaced. Lily, laughing as she splashed in the shallows of a different river. Her tiny arms wrapped around him, her giggles filling the air. "You're my best boy, Max," she had whispered. The memory pushed him forward. Step by step, he moved across the bridge. Then, crack, a plank snapped beneath him. His body lurched forward. For a brief, terrifying second, he was weightless. Then, splash, the icy water swallowed him whole. Max thrashed, panic surging through him as the current yanked him downstream. His legs kicked, his head breaking the surface just long enough to gasp for air before another wave crashed over him. The shore blurred past him, too fast, too far. He fought to stay afloat, his muscles burning with exhaustion. The current was too strong. He was going to drown. No, not now. Not after everything. With one final surge of strength, he kicked toward the shore. His paws scraped against something solid, rocks. He dug his claws into the riverbank, pulling himself onto the frozen earth, gasping for breath. He lay there, drenched and shivering, but alive. The river had tried to take him, but it had failed. And so, once more, Max stood up and kept walking. Not all dangers came from hunger or the elements. Some came from others like him. One night, as he searched for food near an abandoned warehouse, a low growl echoed through the alley. Max froze. From the shadows, a pack of strays emerged. Their fur was thick with scars, their eyes sharp with hunger. They had claimed this territory, and Max was trespassing. The leader stepped forward, a massive dog, his ears torn from old fights. He bared his teeth. Max lowered his head, his body tense. He did not want to fight, but survival was not always about what he wanted. The leader lunged. Pain exploded in Max's side as teeth sank into his flesh. He yelped, twisting away, but the others closed in. A brutal fight. Blood. Snarls. The sound of tearing flesh. By the time Max managed to escape, his body was battered, his wounds deep. But he was still breathing, and that meant he could still move forward. 50 miles. That was how far he had traveled. Through storms and hunger. Through pain and loneliness. 50 miles for one last chance at love. His legs trembled beneath him as he climbed the final hill. And then, in the distance, a house. Not just any house. A small, white home with a red door. A swing set in the yard. A light glowing in the window. Something about it felt familiar. Max took a step forward. Then another. And then, the door opened. A girl stepped outside. Her golden curls caught the light. Her eyes, wide and filled with wonder, met his. And in that moment, Max knew. He had found what he was looking for. Love. A new beginning. A second chance. And this time, he was home. Max stood frozen at the edge of the yard, his body swaying with exhaustion. The long journey had taken everything from him. His strength, his warmth, his hope. But now, standing in the golden glow of the porch light, he felt something stir inside him. Something he had not felt in a very long time. Could this be real? The girl was still staring at him, her breath visible in the crisp night air. She clutched a small stuffed animal against her chest, her fingers gripping it tightly as if afraid to move. Max took a step forward. Her eyes widened, but she did not run. Another step, then another. His legs shook, his paws barely lifting off the ground, but he kept going. A few more feet, and he could smell her now, warm, like vanilla and soap. Like home. And then, she spoke. "Mommy." Her voice was soft, uncertain. "There's a dog outside." The front door creaked open wider, and a woman stepped onto the porch. She had the same golden hair as the girl, though hers was pulled into a loose braid. Her eyes, tired but kind, scanned the yard. The moment she saw Max, she gasped. "Oh, sweetheart." Her voice was filled with something Max did not recognize. It was not fear, not anger, something softer, something like sadness, or maybe understanding. She knelt down, beckoning him closer. "Hey there, buddy. Where did you come from?" Max hesitated. Would she chase him away? Would she turn her back like so many others? He did not know if he could bear it again. But then, the little girl took a step forward. She was small, maybe 6 or 7, with a spark of curiosity in her bright blue eyes. She crouched down, stretching out a tiny hand. "It's okay," she whispered. "You don't have to be scared." Max did not realize he was shaking until he felt it. Warmth. Her fingers, soft against his fur. A simple touch, so gentle, so light. And just like that, something inside him broke. His legs gave out beneath him, and he collapsed into the cold grass. Not out of fear, not out of pain, but because, for the first time in forever, he finally felt safe. Love finds him again. He did not remember much after that. Strong arms lifted him. A soft blanket wrapped around his trembling body. The world became a blur of warmth and quiet voices. And then, darkness. When Max woke up, he was somewhere new. The scent of fresh linen surrounded him. A fireplace crackled nearby, filling the air with the smell of burning wood. He was lying on a thick dog bed, his body wrapped in a fleece blanket. The bandages on his side were clean, snug against his wounds. For a moment, he just breathed. Then, he felt something. A weight beside him. He turned his head and found her. The little girl. She had fallen asleep beside him, her tiny body curled up on the rug, one arm draped over his back. Max blinked, his chest tightening. It was familiar. The way she smelled. The way she breathed, slow and steady, her fingers twitching as she dreamed. Like Lily. But she was not Lily. And yet, she had given him something he thought he had lost forever. A home. A family. Love. A second chance. Days passed. Max healed. Slowly, but surely, his body grew stronger. The bruises faded, the cuts closed. The hunger that had once consumed him was replaced by full meals, warm, rich, and given with love. Every morning, the girl, her name was Emma, would wake up and run straight to him, wrapping her arms around his neck just like Lily used to do. "You're my best boy, Max," she whispered one morning, pressing her cheek against his fur. The words hit him like a wave. His name. She had given it to him without even knowing. It was as if, somehow, the universe had led him exactly where he was meant to be. His journey had been long, painful, filled with loss, but it had brought him here, to Emma, to a home that would never abandon him again. And for the first time in forever, Max closed his eyes and slept peacefully. The final message. Max's story is not just about survival. It is about love, about second chances, about the unbreakable bond between a dog and the family that chooses to love him. Somewhere, out there, another stray is walking the same lonely road, waiting, hoping, searching for someone who will look past the dirt, the scars, the sadness, and see the heart that still beats beneath it all. Maybe that someone is you, because love has no boundaries. And sometimes, the ones who need us the most are the ones who have been searching for us all along.